Welcome, everyone, to a co-hosted event by the Skwim Toastmasters Club, of which I am the president, Lindy McLean, this year, and District 32. We're excited to have you here, both as the special training and also as part of our monthly special event series. To open, I am going to read the Toastmasters mission statement because it's always relevant. The mission of our Toastmasters clubs is to provide a mutually supportive and positive learning environment, which of course we're going to do today, in which every member has the opportunity to develop communication and leadership skills, which in turn foster self-confidence and personal growth. We are delighted to see so many faces from near and far. I know Kyle will address some things about letting us know where you are coming from. Kyle already stated once that there will be a recording. The district is going to manage that, and so we promise that it will have a destination, and you can always inquire about how to access it. Give us some days to make that happen. If you are able to turn your camera on, we of course encourage you to do that. You know yourself how it makes a difference to feel like people are paying attention when there are faces actually looking at you. So if you're able to turn your camera on, we really appreciate it. By the same token, please keep your microphone off unless you are speaking. I'm not sure that our VPM is here yet, and I'm not prepared to post the Skwim guest book yet, so I will be sure and look that up if she's not here. Are you here now, Ayushi?
Yes, I'm
Okay,
here.
so she's going to be posting that in the chat, and if you are new, whether even if you're just coming for this one training, please do sign into our guest book. We really appreciate that. And that brings me around to getting to introduce our presenter, our panel moderator of the night, as I move my screens around to get to where I need to be. As you well know, contest season is almost upon us, so it's time to prepare. So who are the major players in every contest? Well, there are the contestants, of course, but there are also the players behind the scenes, of which there are many, as you know. In particular, there are the judges. That is the role our panel will be focusing on tonight. To lead our panel of experts, we have a person experienced on both sides of the contest. He has competed in every type of contest Toastmasters offers, at least once, and has competed at every level, from the club all the way up to the World Championship of Public Speaking. Psst, he placed third in the world in 2003. Our moderator has also experienced judging contests from the club to the district level and has been a chief judge several times. He says, I've learned a lot about public speaking from competing and almost as much from judging. Both are doorways to growth. Leading our judges training tonight is past District 32 Director, 2 times DTM, and recipient of this year's prestigious Toastmasters International Presidential Citation, someone who's actually read the contest rule book from cover to cover. Please help me welcome Kyle Hall.
Thank you, Lindy. Thank you very much. As Lindy just said, contest season is upon us, and we need to get ready. So that's what this judges training is all about. And the Skwim Club is honored to host this for District 32. And of course, we didn't limit ourselves just to District 32. We publicized this all across Region 1 and even internationally. So we have people from all over the world coming to join this meeting. And with 48 participants logged in right now, I apologize. We just can't go through and ask every guest to introduce themselves and tell us where they're from. I would love to do that. It would be an hour doing that. So I am going to ask you in a moment to put some information in the chat, because we're going to save the chat and we're going to use it as a database of who's here. So I'll ask you to do that in a moment. I also want to mention we are recording this, and give us a few days to a week and we'll get this recording out on a YouTube channel. And for everyone who registered to attend, we can send you an email with that link once it's live. Whoa, something just happened there and it interrupted my opening comments. Anyway, as I was saying, what I want you to do is I want you to put in the chat your name, your district, and your club, and just send it to everybody. One, we'll get to see who you are and where you're from. And two, we will save the chat and we can use that to record who is who actually attended the meeting. We have three top-notch presenters tonight. I'm going to introduce each one of them in turn. I'll introduce the first one in a moment. But I want to let you know we have three panelists. They're each going to speak. After they each speak, we're going to break for 20 minutes, a half an hour. And we're going to break into two groups. People who stay in the main room, we're going to do a practice exercise where we're going to have a miniature table topics contest, and you are going to judge the contest and send your results to a ballot counter. People who do not stay in the main room, who go off to the breakout room, those people will be learning about how to be a chief judge and what's involved in being a chief judge. Not a judge, a chief judge. So if you're interested in being a chief judge, put a CH in front of your name, and that way we'll know you want to go off to the chief judge room. And when we're done with that exercise, then we're going to have Q&A. So write down your questions, save your questions. We'll do Q&A at the end. We put aside 15 minutes for it, but we will stay and answer your questions until you run out of questions. Our first panelist tonight is Brian Bezenek. Now, I met Brian when the Yukon-Alaska clubs and those Southwest Washington clubs were merged into District 32. And he and I met pretty much right away, and I've enjoyed working with him ever since then. Brian is a longtime Toastmaster. He's earned his DTM. He has been a past chief judge, and he is our current program quality director. So I have a lot of respect for anyone who steps up to that level of service. Please help me welcome panelist number one, Brian Bezenek.
Thank you, Kyle. Wonderful introduction there. I just want to say that when I first started Toastmasters, I came because I wanted to learn to be a better speaker. And then I got caught with the competing bug for a bit. So I competed every chance I got. And back then we had two sets of contests. We had one in the fall and one in the spring. So I got to do lots of competing. Now, I never was able to achieve the same level of victories that Kyle did. And eventually I got caught and tugged into district leadership. And when you get into district leadership, they reveal one little thing for the rules. Because at that point in time, I wasn't really reading the rules like I should have. And found out that if I'm a district officer, I can't compete. And I was bummed. And then I thought, all those times I competed, somebody put the contest on. I can do that. And I can still compete by making sure the competitions run. And if I can get the competitions to run smoothly when I'm in charge, that's a victory. I finished first that time. No matter how many contests I did, if it ran smoothly, I considered it a victory. So I am here now to share some of the knowledge that I picked up by running contests for years, being the chief judge, running up to district level contests. And I did contests in person before COVID hit. I did contests and led contests during the COVID when we went online, and we're doing it that way, and through the hybrid aspect the last year or so. Now, I can say that if you're not familiar with contests in the past, this is all brand new for you. But it's really not all that different. Now, we're going to cover, as Kyle mentioned, just the judges and the chief judges portions of the night. So I'm going to cover just a few portions of that. And the key one is when you get asked if you're going to be a judge or if you could be a judge, they're going to look to see if you're qualified. Now, am I qualified? Now, I can just once say is that I'm going to suggest that if you get tagged to be a judge, a tie-breaking judge, or eventually you step up to be a chief judge, read the rule book. If you're not being a chief judge, if you were asked to be a ballot counter or any of the other functionaries, read the rule book. And here's a trick. You know anybody who's competing? Read the rule book. The rule book explicitly sets who is qualified to compete, what the general rules of each of the contests are, and how it's all handled. Because if you know all the rules, you're not going to put yourself into a gray area where you may find yourself disqualified. And as a chief judge, that's one of the hardest things you have to tell someone. Thanks for competing, but we can't use you. We can't even judge you. So as a judge, am I qualified? Well, it depends on what level of the contest you're at. If you start off with just the club contest, and that's the easiest one to do because your club generally has one of those anyway. If you're going through and doing the contest, you just have to be a paid member of the club, and the club has to be in good standing, which means it has to have a minimum of right now 8 members. That's all you need to do. You need to have your membership paid to Toastmasters. Once you go beyond the club itself and you're dealing with areas, which is 4 to 5 clubs or 4 to 6 clubs, or if you're in the division, which is multiple areas, you've got to be a paid member. Plus, you have to have one more set of instructions for it. You need to have either completed 6 speeches in the old competent communicator manual, we refer to the legacy system, or you need to have completed a level 1 and a level 2 in pathways, in one path. Although generally, if you've completed a level 2 and one of the paths, you've completed the level 1, because you can't get to level 2 without doing level 1. So just finish a level 2. Now, those are the 2 big ones, and they go all the way up through the district level. Now, if you're going to be asked to be judging beyond the district level, consider yourself honored, because that only happens at regional tournaments or regional levels and the international. And they are very picky about their judges. You have to have, and I'm not even familiar with those because I've never actually had the honor of being asked to be a judge at that level. It's beyond, you need to have, I think, one more, and I'm not even going to look at it. I'd have to look in the rule book. And it's on my other screen right now. And I'm not going to worry about that because generally if you're attending this, it's just a review, or you've already done it, and they know that you're going to be qualified, because people will vet their judges generally before they're asked. And a lot of the times at these higher level contests, they're talking to district directors, they're talking to area directors, not area directors, generally the district directors, because they'll be the ones available to do the contests at that level. So those are your big ones that you need to worry about. There's going to be one more disclaimer thing in there, that for division and district, well, actually for any of the contest, if you're running for an elected office at the district level, which might be an area director, a division director, or any of the trio or any other district level offices that your district holds elections for. In District 32, that's just division directors and the trios. The rest of the offices are appointed. If you are running and have your name submitted for any of those offices, you cannot be an official in a contest. It is just to take your step back so you're not putting any of that impression of impropriety of trying to get extra notoriety for your campaign. Most of the time, it's not a problem. But if you're running for any of those offices, that is not a problem. There is one little side trick that I learned and was taught this one, and it was mentioned to me, that if your district holds their annual business meeting before they hold their district council or before they hold their district contest, you are no longer running for office because that election's over. You've either been elected, which means you're now qualified, or you didn't get the job and you're qualified. You're still qualified to do it. If you're running, you can't. So if your district holds their annual business meeting before the contest, you're golden. Otherwise, you get to be an audience member. And sometimes that's an excellent thing to do too. And believe me, after being a judge for 6 years, 7 years, it's nice to show up to a contest and just sort of sit back and not have to worry about doing anything. Those of you who've been doing it for years are nodding your heads. Yeah. The other bit and piece is that at division and district level contests, there's going to be one more thing on your judge's eligibility form that you sign, that it says, none of the contestants that I am judging are in a club that I'm a member of. This is also just one more thing. They don't want you to be club familiar with any of the contestants. They're looking for people that have the extra step of being the impartial when you're doing all these elections. So have your membership paid, know who's competing, review the rules, and assist when you can. So that's one part. So you find out that you're qualified to run. You've asked to be a judge or a chief or a tie-breaking judge. Basically, those two are the same position. There is one little small key thing in there. When you judge for a contest and you go and you listen to all the contestants, and when you get done and you're at the bottom and you're filling in your ballot, a judge will typically fill out a ballot that places a first, third, second, and third place in the contest, which is nice. Okay, you fill all those in, you submit those ballots. If you are a tie-breaking judge, you place everybody. If there are 9 contestants, you place them from 1 to 9 based on how you rank them on your voting ballot. Now, only one person's going to see your ballot besides you if you're the tie-breaking judge, and that's going to be the chief judge. You are asked to be separate and be a judge, but you're not with the rest of the judging crew. And your ballot is only used in the case of a tie. Makes it simple. So you've been asked to be a judge. Now, generally, if everything's on time, you've been asked to be a judge 2-3 weeks before the contest. In this world, they may email out you the set of forms. There's a judge eligibility form that you look at all the instructions and go, yes, I can do all that. I'm willing to do all that. You sign the form and you bring it back to the contest. Or you could email it back to the chief judge. Now, the chief judge will very likely in an in-person contest have these forms for you to sign the day of the contest if you don't want to go through all the hassle of filling out the form and emailing it back. That's the easy way of doing it. They sign that day. The trick is we'll know then whether if anybody is a contestant has bowed out and they're bringing in a second place or a third place contestant to fill a role, because maybe you were good with the first one, but you're not good. You're a member of the club with one of the other contestants. Well, you can no longer be a judge. So you show up ready to go, show up ahead of time. If the contest starts at 10 and the chief judges said, we're holding the judge briefing at 9:40, be there by 9:30. This way you can sort of get yourself placed down. The chief judge can find you, tell you where you're going to be meeting. And then you can sort of discreetly scurry off to the judge's briefing that you're going to be getting all your forms and your briefings at. So you want to show up early. Bring a writing utensil, a pen or a pencil, sometimes 2, just as a backup, because we all know your ink or your pencil lead's going to break in the middle of a contest. So be prepared for that possibility. Now, before the contest, the chief judge has their little briefing. They gather everybody out. They explain to you, here's your forms, here's your ballots. Depending on how many contests you're judging, if your area is doing multiple areas, to make it simple. If your areas are close enough, you could put them together on the same date. And then you can exchange judges as well. One area supplies judges for the other contest. Your area supplies judges for the other one. So you're getting people that don't know you. It's an easy way of making sure that you have enough bodies to fill all your roles. So you're going to show up. If you're given multiple ballots, make sure that you note which areas or divisions that you're doing the ballots for. So if you're doing for area or division A and division B contests, put division A on one ballot, one division B on the other ballot, because you're going to have ballots for both contests. So prep that before you go in. Maybe rip the ballot off the bottom of the form and slip it into your pocket, or maybe crease it really well so it's easy enough to rip off, or partially rip off. Sign and print your name on the bottom of the ballot ahead of time. These are other things that you can just do to be ready. Now, the chief judge is going to give you the little spiel talking about where the contestants are going to be speaking, what they're going to expect from you, how the contest is going to run. Explain that if you have any probability or problem with someone speaking, you think that it's not original, there you can file a protest. If in the international speech, one of the newer rules implemented last year was you can't refer to another contestant's speech that day. So you're not able to use another contestant's content as part of your speech. If you refer to it, they can be protested out and be disqualified. So basically, if you have that problem, you would write protest across the ballot. So these are your forms. They sit you down. They tell you where they probably want you to sit down in the room. Now, maybe they want you to sit on the outside. Your ballot counters are going to be in the room as well. The ballot counters will be looking to see who you are. Maybe you can tell a ballot counter approximately where you're sitting in the room, because that's just to help them later. When the speech starts and they introduce the first contestant and they're done, you sit there and you tally your score on your forms, and then you sit there and then you wait. And then when the next contestant is there, you tally the forms for the second one, and you're good for that. Now, one of your things when you're done, when you're tallying them up, the judges, you have to break every single tie on your own ballot sheet. You cannot submit a tie to the chief judge. So if you got two people with the same score, figure out a way on who you think between the two of them did a better job. Now, this is going to be subjective to you. Maybe it's whether they got the point across better. Maybe they had the better form, or they got the most points in the area that garnered the most points in the speech. And this is all on the judge's form and the breakout sheet that I believe Joanna or Karen will be talking about later. These are what you use to fill out your forms. When you're done with the form, you've finished and place 1, 2, 3 on the ballot, fold it up, and either hold the ballot in the air, or if you're provided an envelope, you put it in the envelope, you hold the envelope in the air. Now, judges are supposed to remain anonymous. Even after the contest, if someone comes up and asks you how you voted, you don't say anything. You say, I can't comment. I'm not allowed to comment on how I cast my votes. You're not even supposed to give them advice afterwards on what you think they can help better. There are plenty of other people at the contest to do that for you. Now, what I really love is I'm anonymous. I'm sitting here with a clipboard or a folder, and after everyone's speaking, I'm sitting there scribbling down numbers on this sheet. And at the end, when they say, the judges, please give the judges time to finish tallying their ballots, you can see who's got their head down looking at a clipboard or an open folder. So what I really want to do one of these times when I'm chief judge is I want to ask an extra 10 or 15 volunteers. And I'm going, can you act like judges? Give them extra folders, put them out there. Just act like you're being a judge. And then when you're done, I want you to hold up the envelope, and I'm going to hand out an extra 10 ballot envelopes for the ballot counters to collect. That way, you've hidden the judges just one more level. Now, that is being really extra, And being Toastmasters, we probably don't need to worry about that because one of our core things in Toastmasters is ethics. But this is just one of the things. I want to play games with the audience one of these times. I want to have everybody hold up their ballot and say, this is my ballot, to do everything there. But I think that would be kind of fun. So those are the big things with that. And then you just wait and hang around. And if there is not a protest in the ballot itself, you're golden. Now, the chief judge will collect all the ballots and go off and do everything else. And then that is when you're done, take your form that you did not hand into the chief judge, because you don't hand in your scores. You fold them up, put it in your pocket, take it home and destroy it there. But the key thing for being a judge is the willingness to take the time to step up and volunteer, because you learn things being a judge. You learn how the good people give speeches. You learn how to analyze speeches, including your own, at a later point in time on how to be better. Don't be afraid to step forward and say, yeah, I'll be a judge this year. Back to Kyle for the next panelist.
Brian, thank you for those insights into being a judge. We are going to move on to our second panelist tonight, Joanna Tavera. Now, I've known Joanna for a bunch of years now, and I've worked with her. I've been a judge or other role within a contest that she was chief judging, and I was always impressed with her judging skills, chief judging skills. Last year, she was District 32's chief judge. She is serving as an area director. Again, this is the second or maybe third time as an area director. She's been division director. And for last year, she is District 32's Toastmaster of the Year. Please help me welcome my friend and an expert judge, chief judge, Joanna Tavera.
Thank you very much, Kyle, for that introduction and for asking me to be part of this panel for the education session for judges training. Kyle mentioned I've served as a judge in several different capacities and as a chief judge, and my experience started in 2012 and has progressively gotten better, more informed, and also smoother as the time has gone by. For those of you that are serving as a judge for the very first time, this is a great learning experience for you. It's a learning experience. It's an opportunity for you to expand your leadership and for you to serve the members of your club, the area, the division, and the district and beyond, no matter how far you go as judging. When we talk about Toastmaster values, we talk about integrity, support, service, and excellence. And all of those values are represented when you serve as a judge. Whether you're a judge for the very first time or you're a judge with several years of experience. Last year and previous, we had online contests, and there have been some changes for the experience from the online experience to the in-person. And tonight, my responsibility is to talk to you about online versus in-person contests, the art of judging, some of the things to consider when you are judging, and to be successful in that judging. And then, importantly, after the contest. What do you as a judge have to do after the contest? Let's start with online versus in-person contest. As a judge, your ballot has not changed, and there are very few things that have changed from your specific needs as a judge. The challenge sometimes when an individual moves into judging is they forget that it's not about evaluation. It is about looking at the judge's form. And Karen is going to explain the judge's form further, the components of it, the segments of it, and how you as a judge are looking at the criteria. But the judge's form does not change. It is the same from the club, the area, the division, and all the way up to the international contest. So you are actually seeing the judge's form from its most minute form into what is going to be every single component that the contestants are going to look at. So as a judge, your in-person experience, your online experience is not going to change when it comes to your form. What will change is the tools that you get. As an in-person at an in-person contest, your chief judge will more than likely provide certain tools for you. They will provide a calculator, a clipboard, pens, your judging forms. Some of the items will already be prepared for you and in person, and you'll be able to touch them, as opposed to the online where you get much of that material through an email, through specific websites or other forms, text messages. We will not have that in the in-person contest. The in-person contest will give you actual physical forms that you will be turning in. Some of the things to consider in the in-person contest that you do not have in online contest is your anonymity will not be complete. You will actually be seen, and when you turn in your judges forms, you might be recognized turning in your judges forms. Those items are all okay. The reason that we want to keep judges' anonymity intact as possible is to ensure that the judges are not hassled afterwards. And you think that may not happen, but there is a rule in place for a reason. So when you think about being a judge, some of the things that you want to do is you want to sit on the outside of the room and try to stay away from contestants. You don't know who the contestants are? Look at the happy people who are extremely nervous because they are probably your contestants. But in light of that, and I'm making a joke here, just because I want you to understand that sometimes it's stressful. So when we move from online contest to in-person contest, there will be a certain level of stress that you as a judge will experience. Which moves us into the art of judging. How do you as a judge prepare? How do you observe the observer? How do you analyze the contestant? And how do you manage your stress? There's several things that you can do. Number one, you can prepare yourself. Go to the Toastmasters International website and look at the judges form for the contest that you will be judging. This year, District 32 has the International Speech Contest and the Table Topics Contest. Both of those contests have separate ballots and guides. The top portion is the guide for the judge to rate the contestant, and the bottom portion is the actual ballot that the judges submit to the chief judge to decide who the winner is. So preparation for you really needs to start with understanding what the ballot is. What are the criteria? Look at the international rule book, the speech contest rule book. That is a valuable tool for you as a judge to understand what your responsibilities are, what is expected of you, and how to prepare to be the best judge that you can be. As you are judging, and I keep reinforcing the word judging, we are not evaluating contestants. And many of us in our Toastmaster experience evaluate a speaker. This, we are looking for a winner. We are looking for the top placement, and we are looking for the individual who meets the criteria and meets the objectives on the judge's guide. How do we understand that, and how do we do that? We try to disassociate ourselves from what we know about the speaker. We may have experienced the speaker speak on several different occasions. We have maybe seen them be very successful. Judging a speaker is this speech, this time, this moment, and this experience. It is not what you have had previously. It is all about what you are doing right now and how you are experiencing that. You can also observe the observer. And when I say observe the observer, you as the judge have the opportunity to look around the room and to see how other people are responding to the speaker. Did the contestant tell a joke, share a joke? Did anybody laugh? Was there too much laughter? Was there odd looks of whether or not the message was getting through to the speaker, from the speaker to your audience member. Those are things to consider when you're judging, because that's part of the criteria as well. Also, analyze the speech. Are you going to buy what that individual is selling? As the contestant gives you a message and they are sharing a story, they are trying to motivate you or to get you to change a certain behavior. Are you going to change your behavior? Will you implement the suggestions that they give? That is all part of analyzing that speech, whether or not the contestant spoke to you and changed your point of view. Now, one of the most important components of this is stress management for you as a judge. Prior to coming here, I attended a club meeting. We had several people who called out and were not able to attend and fill roles. I had to rush home and be prepared for this. There was a certain amount of stress associated with that. What I would suggest to you when you are serving as a judge is clear your schedule for at least an hour or two before you need to show up as a judge. Arrive early. Make sure that you've eaten something, you've drank, and that you're prepared and your mindset is ready to judge. There are some challenges with us being present and in the moment, and it is very important for us to serve in the best capacity that we can, and we do that when we prepare ourselves. Not only by understanding what the judge's forum looks like, not only understanding the disassociation with what we've seen previously and understanding that we're judging today, when we look around the room and see if other people are responding the same way we are to the speaker, verifying that form, but also your stress management. What are you bringing? What energy are you bringing to your judges? And what can you manage to make sure that you are in the moment, you are focused, you are listening, and you are giving the best support to that contestant that you can. After all of these things that you've done and you've prepared yourself, you've judged the contest, you've submitted your ballots, and you're waiting, just like everybody else is, for the results, there are a few things that I want you to consider about after the contest. And after the contest, your responsibility is to dispose of your worksheet, and that is the judge's guide where you write down your numbers. The reason that we ask you to fold it up, put it in your pocket, and take it home and destroy it is we want to keep your results as quiet as possible. We want to make sure that when there is a result given, that people understand that those are the end results and there's not the picking apart of how that happened. So the worksheets is your responsibility to take home and to dispose of. Please do not leave them in the trash at the contest. The other thing is, do not discuss your judging or who won or why they won. When you are a judge, there's a certain amount of secrecy that you ask. You're not signing an NDA, but you are giving a certain amount of autonomy. And in order to maintain that autonomy, we want to make sure that you're not discussing your judging. People might ask you, they may have seen that you were a judge, and they might ask you, well, why did you judge that way? The results are the results, and we want to make sure that you are as comfortable and have a less amount of stress associated with being pointed out for why someone won. Because again, we are judging based on the criteria in the ballot, not on emotion. So as you're thinking about these things and you're thinking about the online experience and preparing yourself for the in-person experience, remember that there's not a lot of difference. The form is the same. There are some responsibilities that differ slightly with you in the room. Your technique, your knowledge, the support that you're giving as you act as a judge is imperative in the preparation, your stress management, understanding how that form applies to each contestant. And then you have your housekeeping items of after the contest of disposing of the worksheet and not discussing judging and who won. So as we think about the Toastmasters values of integrity, support, service, and excellence, these all culminate in you being a successful judge, and these all culminate in having a successful contest and creating the best platform for our contestants to shine. Happy judging, and may you be successful in all things.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you very much. Thank you for those insights. We are moving on to our third panelist, who's going to be talking about using the judging form in a little bit more detail, and showing us a few specifics, and is going to be preparing us for splitting to do a mock contest here in the main room or go off to a chief judge's room. Now, I have a favor to ask of you, all of you. If you want to go off to the chief judge's room, would you go and put a CH space in front of your name? CH space in front of your name. So for instance, I'm looking at Ayushi Ray, who's a member of my club. If she wanted to go off to the chief judge's room, she would put CH space before her name, Ayushi Ray. And that way, our Zoom master will know who wants to go into the judge's breakout room when that time comes. So I would appreciate if you do that. And let's have Karen Robinette present. Karen.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to our judges training. Thank you, Joanna and Brian, for all that excellent information that you shared. I'm going to share a slideshow, which, nope, not that one, which I think is going to cover too much of the screen, but I haven't been able to figure out how to stop that. So we're going to have to cope with that. So your contest started, you've been given judging forms. Hopefully you've been given a separate form for each contest that you are judging in. So for example, if you're at a joint area contest, there's 3 areas, you would have a form for each contest in each separate area. The form looks like with the one here that's half covered on the right. I break it into 2 parts that I call the objectivity worksheet and the ballot, which Brian talked about the ballot, which is the only part you're going to turn in. So nobody but you should ever see the objectivity worksheet. You're going to use that to tell you how to stay objective. On the back side of that judging form, there is a detailed breakdown of the criteria for each category in the objectivity worksheet. And also, I'll just point your attention to the emphasis on objectivity and that you need to maintain it. Joanna's already talked a lot about that. So you're going to use it to stay as objective as you can, avoiding bias. And they talk about, on the back there, they'll talk about avoiding bias based on if you know the speaker or not, and is he in your club or not, and in race, etc. But one thing we don't talk about a lot that I think we need to remember is we also want to avoid bias that comes from whether we agree with the message or not. We're trying to judge how well they put their message across, not whether we agreed with it or not. And that can be a difficult thing to stay objective about. So remember that. Joanne already mentioned we're going to destroy the worksheet after the contest and not discuss it with anybody. So here we get into the form itself. 50% of it is about the content. That's speech development, effectiveness, and speech value. That's half of your judgment on the speech. And then you've got 30% is your manner, your physical appearance, your voice, how confident you are, etc. And then 20% is appropriateness and correctness of the language. So to break down the first section, the half of your judgment, you've got speech development, and this is broken out in detail on the back side of the judging form. But speech development is there an opening, a body, and a conclusion? Is the purpose clear? Do the opening and the conclusion tie the whole message together? Do the support material, is it clear and appropriate to what purpose the speaker has? Hopefully you can tell what purpose the speaker has. That's part of what you're judging. Because if you can't, well, then they haven't done a very good job with that part of the speech development. Effectiveness has to do with, one, is the purpose clear? Two, did they achieve it? Was their support material effective in communicating their message to you and in possibly persuading you to at least consider their message? Is the support material relevant to the message they're trying to convey and the purpose of their speech? And the third part, which is half, noted, of the content score, has to do with the value of the speech. And again, here's where you really have to watch out about judging by whether you agree with them or not. You're trying to evaluate how important are the ideas that they're conveying and the logic with which they convey it. Are there original thoughts there that maybe you or maybe a lot of other people haven't thought about? Every once in a while, I'm judging a speech where somebody's talking about a subject that I really, really know. And I've thought about all the things that they talk about. So nothing seems original to me, but I have to separate myself from my personal experience in that case, because most people haven't spent as much time thinking about that message as I have. Will the ideas be original to a lot of the audience? As Joanna suggested, I'm watching the audience and I'm also noting, do they appear to be getting something new from it? So speech value, again, that's supposed to be half of your content score. That's an important thing to be considering. And this is where you'd be marking a score for it. The things we often think about with quality of a speech, the gestures, the posture, how are they using the speaking area? Their voice, is their voice varied and easy to listen to? Is it loud enough? Can I hear it? Are they using pitch, tone, volume, pace, pauses effectively to emphasize their message and to make it clear? And their manner, do they seem like they're hiding behind a lectern and they're nervous and scared to death, or do they seem to be confident, and are they enthusiastic about their message? How are they affecting the audience around you? That's all manner, and that adds up to 30% of the score. And then last but not least, you got 20% goes to appropriateness of the language and correctness of the language. Now, you do not have to be a grammarian to judge the correctness of language when you're judging a speech. I generally assume 10 points to start out with, and if there's grammar issues that are so bad they're disrupting the speech and they're distracting me from the message, well, then I would start taking points off for correctness. Grammar, same with pronunciation. If I can't understand what they're saying, then they would lose points for correctness. Or word selection. If they're using words that are offensive or that are bothering me or that seem inappropriate, I might, or too much jargon so that half the audience isn't going to understand what they're saying. Those would all be, that one would actually come under appropriateness. And one day when I was judging one contest, there was a speaker who just used words really, really cleverly. I mean, their word choice was beyond exceptional. It was really amazing. So I kind of snuck in an extra point and added 11 points for that one instead of 10. Remember, nobody but you is going to see your form in the end. So you're scoring according to what works, what gives you the best way of making an objective judgment. When you have finished the scoring, well, one tip, I like to start from the right edge of the form, first speaker on the right edge, and then fold it under with each speaker. So I'm not looking at the scores I gave to the previous speakers. I think Joanna suggested that. I have a picture somewhere in here of that. I'm not sure where I put it. At the end, though, I'm going to add up my scores. Now, I like to use the scores the way the form says. You don't have to do it that way. However, as Joanna suggested, there are a lot of ways. Nobody's going to see it but you. I think Brian one day suggested he just writes down how many he's going to take off, and then he has smaller numbers to add up. I used to bring a calculator, or sometimes I actually remember that there's a calculator on my phone. Amazing thing. To add them up, or sometimes I add them up in my head. Whatever works for you. What you're trying to do is weight it the way the form asks you to weight it, because all the contestants can look at this ahead of time and know how they should be planning their speech to be judged. And you want to stick to that weighting. And you want to keep yourself objective. In this case, I've got scores added up for my fake contestants here. The highest score by my system comes out for Minnie Mouse. So she's my first place. And when I get down here onto this ballot, she goes in the first place line. And then my second highest score is in the second place line. And my third highest in the third place line. Notice I'm not reporting the scores. All I'm reporting is the ranking. If there were at least 3 speakers, I must include 3 speakers on this ranking. If there's less, obviously I'm going to have less. Don't forget your name and the signature. They're going to have to throw your ballot out if they don't have those. And if you're in a joint contest where maybe you've got 3 clubs or 3 areas or 2 or 3 divisions all competing for international speech, make sure you include that area or club or division number there so your chief judge knows. He can easily see which contest it's for. This is the only part you turn in. So District 32 has been holding 4 other contests on a rotating schedule. That's the schedule we had. This year we're doing table topics, and those forms are quite similar. Again, almost a little over half of this time is speech development and effectiveness. 30% is physical and voice instead of 20. And you got 15% for language appropriateness and correctness, but it's basically the same idea. Same kind of form. The bottom part looks exactly the same. Humor speech has got it. Notice they say on the top which speech contest they are for. And those are the ranking divisions for them. They're a little bit different. Valuation contest, if your district does them this year, emphasize the analytical quality of your evaluation. How specific were you? How well did you identify the things they did well and not, and why, and maybe suggestions? Are your recommendations for improvement positive and specific, helpful? Are you positive, encouraging, and appropriate to what is going to be most helpful to the speaker? And a conclusion, which often we don't see in club evaluations, though it's nice if they're there, but that's 15%. So when in your contest, you're also evaluating, did they wrap it all together? Summarize it. So you want your bottom portion goes to the ballot counters. As Joanna emphasized, The top portion, you are going to discreetly discard so nobody else can find it. And you're not going to be discussing your judgments with anybody else, no matter how much they want to. As both Joanna and Brian emphasized, I'm going to emphasize it again. And you're going to be objective. So that is what I had to say. I'm going to pass the lectern back to Kyle to move us on to the next part of this event. Think we have question and answers maybe, or?
Not quite yet. Not quite yet. We are going to have a Q&A. We are going to break into a room with Karen Robinette to talk about chief judges, and people are going to stay in the main room. We are going to do a mock contest. It's going to be a mock table topics contest. Because table topics are short, then it's not going to take up a lot of time for the table topic speakers. But you'll get a chance to use the judging form. So I asked you to put CH space in front of your name if you want to go into the chief judge's room. Mr. Zoomaster, would you move? Excuse me. Would you move those people off into the room? You should be either going off into the room or be getting an invitation to move off into the room. And I see people leaving. Now, give me 1 second. Hopefully, earlier today, when you received the email that had the link and the Zoom link and everything else, hopefully you saw the links to the various judging forms. I am posting the link to the table topics judging form in the chat. If you do not have a copy of the table topics judging form, I suggest downloading it now. I don't think it's editable online, so I don't think you're going to be able to use it online. If you can print it, print it. But even if you can't, have it up on screen so that you can write your numbers down and add it up. We're not going to collect the ballots. We have no physical way of doing that. I'm going to have you put text in the chat that mimics the ballot, and I'm going to have you send it to our ballot counter when we get there. So that's kind of how we're going to do this. And contests, if you've been to a contest, and I assume many of you have, we have a contest toastmaster, we have a chief judge, there's some formality, there's some warming up the audience, the telling of the rules and all this stuff. We're not going to do
got room set up for her, so we can do it.
Okay, so he's going to Galen, he's going to put you into a breakout room and just wait for a message from him to come back out. It'll only be a couple minutes.
Let's be a slight. Okay.
Okay. We randomly determined that our speaking order is Lindy McLean, first speaker, Galen Woodall, second speaker. So Galen has to leave the room.
Okay. All right. There we
Yep.
Okay, Galen has left the room. Our chief judge has left the room. We're going to do a mock contest. So I hope everyone who is still here has a table topics judging form in front of them. And 1 second. So I'm going to put this in the chat right now.
Kyle,
Yes.
I've never done a table topics contest before. Thank God.
Okay.
So you're going to call me in, and then what's the?
So because you're a first speaker.
Yeah.
Okay. The way a table topics contest works, let's say there's 5 speakers. The first one stays in the room, the other 4 leave the room. And the sergeant at arms stays with them. And I give you the table topics question. You have 1 to 2 minutes to answer the question. And then you're done. You can sit down.
When do you announce my name twice, like other contests, and when do you ask the question? Which order? How does that work?
Typically, you would say Lindy McLean, and then I would read you the question, and I would read you the question again, and then you're on.
Thank you.
And anyway, so you do the first speaker, they speak, Judges get a minute of silence. You do the second speaker, you bring the second speaker in, give them the question, minute of silence for the judges, bring the third speaker in, and you progress through it like that. Similar to the evaluation contest, the only difference is you're keeping the speakers from hearing the question in advance. Okay. Are you ready, Linda? Oh, just so everybody knows, so everybody's here, I am putting in the chat what I'm going to ask you to do when the contest is over, after you've heard the two people and you've used the form and you've added it up. I'm going to ask you to write voting ballot, first place, second place, and your name. You have to have your name, and you're going to send it to our ballot counter in the chat. Don't do it now. Wait. Okay. Our first speaker tonight, our first table topics speaker tonight is Lindy McLean. Lindy McLean. Lindy, your question is, if you could go back in time and tell your 10-year-old self one thing, what would it be and why?
Are you going to repeat the question?
I should have. Sorry. I'm out of practice. Lindy, if you could go back in time and tell your 10-year-old self one thing, what would it be and why?
If I could go back in time and tell my 10-year-old self something, what would it be and why? That is an excellent question, Mr. Table Topics Master. I'm 10 years old. I hate being a girl. I hate it. It's so hard. And I don't get anywhere near the opportunities that my brothers do. If I were to go back to my 10-year-old self, I would say, being a girl is not so bad. Hang in there. It has its ups, it has its downs. So does being a boy. Chill. It's okay. Yes, you are a girl. It's okay. Now, would it really make a difference to hear that at 10? I don't know. You know how intense emotions are when you're 10. And of course, they get even more intense as you move into being a teenager. And I don't know if that ever stops. And yet, to hear the voice of someone who loves me tell me that it's okay, being a girl is not so bad. In fact, someday you'll be really glad. Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Lindy. Madam Timer, can we have a minute on the clock for our judges? Judges, you should all be filling out the form, deciding your numbers, and if you have the time, after you've filled out your numbers, add up the column. Mr. Zoom Master, would you see if you can get Gayleen back into the room? Okay. We've had a minute. After our next speaker, you'll have 2 minutes or so. Gayleen, I will say your name twice and I will ask you the question twice. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Can everyone hear Gayleen? Say something again.
Can you hear me?
Okay,
Can
I
you
think we
hear
can
me
hear you.
now?
Yeah, okay. So Gayleen Woodall, if you could go back in time and tell your 10-year-old self one thing, what would it be and why? If you could go back in time and tell your 10-year-old self one thing, what would it be and why?
If I could go back in time and tell my 10-year-old self one thing, it would be, don't ever listen to your brothers. Brothers were put on this earth simply to torment you. I had 3 older brothers. and they would drive me crazy. When I was driving in the car, they would say, "Quick, get down," because a spotlight traveling across the sky, they would profess it to be the Russians spying on me. My brother said that if I ever broke a mirror, I'd have 7 years bad luck. And then one of them proceeded to break the very mirror that I was given for my 10th birthday. My brothers were a band of brothers like the Three Musketeers. And the lies they told me could literally fill a novel from here to tomorrow. Lies, lies, and more lies. They told me that there wasn't a Santa Claus. And yet, one Christmas, when I was very young, tracks of a deer and a sleigh magically appeared on the lawn. There were no footprints leading to the sleigh. There was no way that someone marched across the lawn and left those tracks and the deer's footprints. I was flabbergasted. I believed in Santa forever until those same brothers that did the tracks told me there wasn't a Santa. You know, they told me I was adopted. They told me that my mom and dad had found me in a back alley. They told me never, 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 never be that person in school that gets picked on. I got picked on all the time. You know, we grew up poor, and my brothers and I and 4 other people in my house shared a bathroom. And my brothers would knock on the door and say things like, "If you don't get out of there, you're going to go down the drain." I believed my brothers, but I would learn never listen to them ever again.
Thank you, Gayleen. Madam Timer, could we have 2 minutes on the clock? Judges, fill out your judging form and add up the columns. And then in the chat, put your text, voting ballot, first place, second place, and the name, and then your name at the bottom. And you're sending it to ballot counter. Don't send it to everybody. Okay. So everybody except the timer can put your hands down. I'm going to say we're done because I think most everybody was done. We're going to give the ballot counter. Now, if this were a real contest, the chief judge and the ballot counter or ballot counters would leave the room and do the ballot counting thing. I'm going to let Leobuff do the counting. We only have 2 contestants. I think we're going to be done before the chief judges. So I think we'll get to take a short little break. But my question is, do any of you have questions about the process we just went through? Do you have questions about the judging process we just went through? Ayushi?
My question is the process that we went through. If I am a voting judge, I would do the same thing.
If you were a judge, yes.
A voting judge.
Voting judge?
Yes.
All judges are voting judges. There is there is no such thing as a non-voting judge. If you are
the one that is like the anonymous one. I may be mixing up the name.
tie-breaking judge.
Yes, correct.
Yes. So the tie-breaking judge, yes, you would do the exact same thing. Here's the difference. In a little contest of two people, there is no difference. Let's say there were 6 contestants. All the other judging forms, the normal judging ballot form only has 3 slots: first, second, third place. The tie-breaking judge has 9 slots. So you would place all 6 people in the order. That's if there were 6 contestants, you would count up the numbers and you put all 6 people in that order. So that's so the tie-breaking ballot is just a little bit different, but the process is pretty much the same. You're filling out the numbers, you're adding up the columns, figuring out who is first, who is second, who is third, who is fourth, fifth, and sixth, and so forth.
Got it. Thank you.
Now, at one point I want to make, I had you put your name at the bottom of the ballot. I have been a chief judge, and I have had judges who forget to put their names on the bottom of the ballot. And when they do that, you have to throw out the ballot. So they just went to all that work. They showed up, went to all that work, and we just lost that ballot. So when I'm giving my chief judge's briefing, one of the things I tell people is, before the contest even starts, put your name on the bottom of the ballot. And if you're there for 2 contests and 2 different areas doing 2 different contests, that's 4 ballots. Put your name on the bottom of all 4 ballots before the contest even starts. That way, because in the heat of doing the judging process, it's easy to forget to put your name on the bottom of the ballot.
So that is authorized to do then, Kyle?
Oh, yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
Name and signature both? Do you
Yes.
have just
Yes.
both or just one?
It
says sign and then print, right? But
Yeah. Yeah. And it's fine for you to do that. Just don't let those ballots out of your hand.
Yeah, of course.
And of course, you tear off the bottom of the ballot. You're only sending that bottom part, the judging form, in the part that has your signature. The top part that has all those numbers, that gets folded up and goes in my pocket until I go home and throw it away. Other questions on this process? Any observations on the process? Go ahead, Todd.
So I believe you said 2 minutes at the end for after the last speaker, but I believe the new ruling is as much time as the judges need.
Yes, yes. Typically, they say 2 minutes at the end, but every contest I've been in, they stand there and wait until, the judges are raising their hand with their ballots, and we stand there and wait until, if there's 5 judges, until there are 5 hands up.
So often what I've done as the chief judge is I have a list of like the 1 through 7 or 1 through 10 that I have, and then I put that number on a blank envelope that I put in with part of the kit. So that way, when they insert the slip into the envelope, and the envelope can be kept like at the bottom of a chair, it doesn't have to be up in the air. As long as the ballot collectors know where they're sitting, they can go and grab the envelope. So it's less evident to the whole room who's doing what. And that
Sure.
way, when the ballot gets back in the room to be counted, they know that, ballot counter number 7 is Todd, ballot counter number 6 is Lindy, like 5 is this, and it matches up. Because in some contests, we give out the blank judging form to everybody to participate and to learn, and all of a sudden, you have a whole plethora of extra judging ballots, and are they actually legit people or not that are supposed to be judges? And
Right.
you're like, oh, wait a second, who's supposed to be a real one here? So I often will score the cards so that I know which ones are the real ones that are coming back if I'm going to be the ballot counter or the chief judge kind of person, to make sure that doesn't get
Okay.
kerfuffled. Because in
That's
our
a good-
district, we also do 4 tests. We do 4 contests. We do all of them in English and all the contests in French. So we have multiple ballots running around.
That's a good chief judge's tip. Any other questions on this process or observations on this process that you want to share? Lindy.
I have a question. So you're a first time judge, and that first person comes out and they just wow you. What do you do with their score? How do you handle that?
So I can tell you how I handle that. You're trying not to compare A to B to C. You're trying not to do that. That's hard. It's very hard. Especially if the first person who comes out is either really bad or really good, however you define that, it's hard not to go, well, that person's better or that person's worse. So I try to stay with the criteria, but one thing that I will do is, so let's say this person's very expressive, their face, their gestures, the vocal variety. I may give them a 10 in vocal variety and expressiveness. Then the next person comes out and they're less expressive. They're less use of the face, less gestures, and so forth. So, well, they're not, so I don't know, I give them a 7 or an 8. Now, let's say a third person comes out and they're even better than the first person. Oh, okay. Well, crud. I may go back and I may say the new person's a 10, the first person is an 8, the second person's a 6. I might make that type of adjustment. I don't think I've ever had to do that, but that's one reason why I almost never ever give anybody a top score. If the top score for expressiveness is a 10, okay, you get a 9. It gives me room in case somebody comes out who's even better.
Thank you. That was the trap I fell into when I first judged, was putting them so high that, wait a minute, oops, now how do I?
Yeah. I almost never give anybody the full points. And that's one of the reasons why. I'm also hard to impress.
Thank you very much.
Other questions or comments? Todd, you have another?
I just had the answer that I've often used is I divide the square diagonally with like a line through each of the squares for the voting. That way I can have a first impression, and then as things have progressed, and oh, by the way, adjustment, or I'll put a 0.5 to differentiate between, best, second best, third best. Because it gets to such a point at the end when you do the calculation, you end up with a tie. Well, how do you break the tie before you put first, second at the bottom of the paper? If I've got a 0.5 extra somewhere, that's going to help me to break the tie at the end.
That is a point worth making. I have on occasion put numbers down and ended up, when I add them up, 2 people have the same value, the same number. Oh, what do I do? Well, you cannot put 2 names on the first on a line on your ballot. You can't do it. You can only put 1 name. So you have to pick one. And if the judging criteria and the numbers isn't doing it, then use your own personal opinion. But you have to pick one. Judy Sadler, you had a question?
There was a lot said by all of the speakers about judge anonymity and how important it was. Is this something being discussed club level, whether judges should be anonymous or not? Since I know there are people who feel that they should not be anonymous.
Yes, we have a member of our Skwim club that is a rabid anti-judge anonymous proponent. So at the club level, the clubs can do pretty much whatever they want. There are some clubs that don't even hold contests. They just, hey, we're going to send Bob to represent the club, or we're just going to vote for best speaker, and that person's going to represent us at the area level. And if the clubs don't want to do anonymous judging, they don't have to. You can do whatever you want in your club. When you get out of the club at the area, division, district level, you got to follow the rules. And the rules say, right now, it's anonymous. Now, is that always going to be the case? Who knows? Toastmasters have been doing this for a long time. They make little changes all the time. I'm not going to hold my breath waiting for judging to become non-anonymous. But it might change. Joanna, do you have a question or a comment?
I actually had a question for the group that is here. It seems like when Lindy was coming up, she wasn't familiar with the table topics, and I wonder how many others are not familiar with the table topics format, because that is we're doing the international speech contest and having the table topics being the focus of these contests. And I just want to make sure that we're providing enough information, and when we have our panel, maybe we'll focus a little bit more on specifics for table topics, because quite a few of us are very familiar with the international speech contest. But I just kind of want to get something in the back of my mind, what I need to focus on, and if table topics is something that I need to talk a little bit more about, especially when we're talking about judging.
Well, Joanna, I joined in 2016, so that's a long time that this district has been without a table topics contest. So anybody older than me or younger than me needs it.
No, completely get that. I just want to be fair. And our purpose for this panel, Kyle put us together based on the fact that we had knowledge, but we also need to impart knowledge that you want and need. So we want to try and balance that.
How many people here have been involved with or seen a table topics contest before? Okay, so I'm seeing about half the hands.
Oh.
How many of you have seen or been involved with an evaluation contest before? Okay, a few more hands there. I can tell you for D32, for the last several years, we just did eval contest and international speech contest, and we didn't do any others. Now we're on a rotating cycle where we do international speech and one other. And seeing as D32 is about to merge with D2 and D9, that whole issue will get revisited again. So we'll see what we'll be doing next year. The Chief Judges group has not come back to us yet. So I'm going to declare you're going to take a 3-4 minute break. We're going to start up again at 8:32. So if you want a quick bio break, go and get it. And at 8:32, hopefully the Chief Judges will be back and we can continue with our Q&A.
Hi, welcome to a recording of the Chief Judge's presentation from District 32's 2024 to 2025 Chief Contest Judge Training Event. Was sponsored by Skwim Toastmasters on December 10th of 2024. I'm Karen Robinette. I'm our Chief Judge in District 32 this year. So you agreed to serve as Chief Judge. What's next? Well, before the contest, you will have completed most of your job. You're going to download the speech contest kits. That's pretty quick. I'll show you how. Read the rule book. Find your judges' ballot counters and timers. And believe me, that's the most time-consuming part of your job. So I hope you're starting early. Get your forms to each official, train them, and make sure that you stay in communication with your contest chair. How are you going to find the contest kits? We'll go to toastmasters.org. Look along the top ribbon menu, click on Resources tab, then click on Speech Contest tab in the next page. That will take you to a page that has a menu bar up on the left corner. Scroll down to the bottom of it and click on any one of these blocks. You will get the entire speech contest kit for that block. That's every form you need as well as the rule books. If you go back up to the top of that page to that menu bar I mentioned, this is a place you can send your judges, say if you want them to download the rule book for themselves. This tab leads to the current version of the rule book. There are other information here, but be aware that they haven't necessarily updated all parts of all of these pages. So if you come up with a discrepancy between any of these pages and the rule book itself, go with the rule book. If you have new judges or other officials and you would like to send them someplace to a tutorial, these are pretty good tutorials on all the different official roles. How do you find the officials? Well, that is a challenge sometimes. You're going to contact whatever other Toastmasters you know, especially experienced Toastmasters who've maybe competed or judged before or have just seen enough competitions, they'll pretty much know what's going on. Contact clubs that are geographically near yours. This year, all of our contests have to be in person above the club level. So we're going to be looking for officials who can drive to the location of the contest. Ask your area and division directors for suggestions. Ask your clubs, if you are doing an area or division contest, ask your clubs to send officials. If they expect you to hold a contest so that their members can shine as competitors, they really ought to be willing to contribute to your contest by sending some officials to help out. Trade with other areas or other clubs. Hey, I'll help with your contest if you'll help with mine. That can work really well. Whatever you do, start the search early and remember the eligibility rules. For club contests, those are easy. Officials just need to be a member in good standing. For area, division, or district, well, they need to have been in good standing for at least 6 months. They need to have completed at least a level 2, unless they're a DTM from the legacy program. And they need to be not running for a district role next year. They need to not be filling another role at the same contest or competing anywhere in the same contest type, as in international speech or table topics, even in different clubs or districts. Say pretty much the same thing for timers and counters, except less. They just need to be a member in good standing. And if it's above the club level, well, not running for district roles and not filling the same role in the same contest. Get your forms to each official. And these forms, again, are all in the speech contest kits. I think that all of the judges should have read at least the portions of the rule book that apply to their contest and to protests. Every single one of your judges needs to have returned to you a judge's eligibility and ethics certificate for each contest that they will be judging in and for each date. You can send these out digitally by email. At least that gives them a chance to read them in advance. They can sign them digitally and email them back to you. But for the signing, it's probably easiest in these in-person contests to just hand them the blank forms at the beginning, ask them to sign them, and return them to you right there in your judge's briefing. It only takes a minute to sign one of these, especially if you've read it in advance. So that's probably easiest. Make sure you've got one for each judge for each contest type. So one for the international speech contest, and one for the table topics contest on any given date. Your judges are going to also need a ballot for every single contest they're judging. If you're doing 2 areas in the same contest, each one of their international speech contests is a separate contest. So make sure your voting judges will have the standard ballot that I showed here. And your tie-breaking judge will have one that looks almost the same. It just says tie-breaking judge at the top. Only you know who the tie-breaking judge is, so you're going to get that ballot to them discreetly somehow. They need a separate sheet for every single contest because they're going to put the rankings down below for every single contest, which is a separate item. Make sure they put their names and their signatures on these ahead of time. That way they can't forget to do it before returning the ballots later, because you're not going to be able to count any ballot that doesn't have the judge's name and signature on it. Your timers need the timer's record sheet and instructions. The instructions are down below. I didn't show them in this picture. They're going to record the times for every speech in your event. Whether they put multiple contests on one sheet or not, I think doesn't really matter, so long as it's clear and easy for you to read when you go to count ballots. But every time, they will need one for every time that you're going to leave the room with the ballot counters to start counting. Your counters need a tally sheet for every single contest that's going to happen in your event, because they're going to show the rankings at the bottom for each one. And you have 2 counters, so double the number of forms to have in your hands when you get to the contest. You're going to need to provide training to each official. Ask your judges to read the speech contest rule book on page 17, protest and disqualifications, ahead of time. Encourage the officials to view the relevant tutorials, especially if they're brand new and they've never done this before. At your officials briefing, which normally happens in an in-person contest during the half hour ahead of the contest, how long it takes depends on how experienced your judges are. It can be done online, also, if you prefer that. Use your judge's briefing checklist wherever you do the briefing on page 30 in the rule book to make sure that you don't forget anything, and make sure that they all understand their roles and have all their needed forms. But during the entire contest planning process, you're going to keep in touch with your contest chair. Before the event happens, you need to agree on how and when you're going to receive the speaking order from the contest chair. I think it really is difficult if the judges don't find out the speaking order until the Toastmaster is reading it off, usually at lightning speed in front of the whole event, because they have to write the names of each one of their contestants on their ballot form. And it can be difficult to get those written down in order at lightning speed. So if you can persuade your contest chair to find the speaking order during the briefings ahead of time and get them to you during your judges briefing so that you can share that with your judges ahead of time, that's a plus. At any rate, you need to agree on when that's going to happen. Agree on how you and the chair are going to communicate in case the contest needs to be paused. Now, in an in-person contest, that's pretty easy. You're in the same room. Shouldn't be tough, but work that out. And this is really, really important. Agree on how and to whom you're going to communicate the contest winners to either the contest chair or the Toastmaster during the event. One of them is going to be reading off the rankings at the end of the contest, and they need to read them correctly. So you need to get with that person and make sure they understand how to read the results form so that they do not read them incorrectly. I was at a contest where that happened, where the Toastmaster, I believe, read the third place winner and called them the first place winner, called the first place winner the third place winner. That is a horrible thing to happen. Once the results are announced, they are official. So if they've been announced incorrectly, you have a major problem on your hand. Good luck resolving it. Once the contest starts, well, you're mostly going to be just monitoring and helping out during a lot of the contest and enjoying it. But you will be asked to give a short briefing on the key rules to the audience at the beginning. That does not need to go over all the rules. The contestants have been through all the rules with the contest chair. The officials have been through all the rules with you. You just need to tell the audience a few of the things that they may be wondering about. How the contestants will be introduced. That the table topics contestants are going to be out of the room until it's their turn so that everyone gets the same question and they won't hear it until the beginning. A few things like that. Collect the speech contest time record sheet from the timers at the end of each contest. Actually, that means each time you're going to leave the room with your ballot counters to count. You personally will collect the speech contest time record sheet from the timers. You also are going to collect the tie-breaking judge's ballot. You're the only one, supposedly, who knows who the tie-breaking judge is, other than them. So you have to collect their ballot. Your ballot counters are going to collect all of your voting judges' ballots. Gather them up. The three of you will leave the room and you'll go out. Each of your ballot counters are going to count through all the judge or tally up all of the judges' results, and they're going to come to a ranking at the bottom of their tally sheet. You and they are then going to compare their two sets of results, make sure everything matches. If it doesn't match, somebody made a mistake and you need to go through and find the mistake and correct it, because you need to make sure you have the correct results before they are reported and become official. You're going to fill a results form out for each one of your contests. Here's a picture of it. Notice it puts the third place winner first because it's normal custom to report our third place winner is Joe Schmo. Our second place winner is Mary the Dragon Slayer. Our third place winner, our first place winner is da 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 da. Okay, but make sure, again, this needs to be clear to whoever's going to read those off so they read it correctly. And if, unfortunately, any eligibility or originality protests come up, you're going to have to resolve them. Hopefully, your contest chair has already eliminated anyone who's not an eligible contestant. They should have done that before the event started, and hopefully that's not going to come up as a result. If it does, they're the ones that resolve that. If somebody was over or under time, you as the judge, you're checking the time record sheet to find out if that's happened. If they're disqualified for that reason, you're going to check yes on the results form to say, yes, somebody was disqualified, but you were not going to tell who it was. You're not going to include them in the rankings, obviously. But the complicated ones get to be originality and referring to another contestant or speech. Those protests can only be lodged by your voting judges and your contestants. You, by the way, are not a voting judge. If there's such a protest from contestant or a voting judge, you're going to ask the contestant to come back to wherever you're deliberating and respond. They have a chance to defend themselves. After hearing that, the voting judges can deliberate with them, whatever. And a majority of voting judges must agree on disqualification in order for them to be disqualified. Again, protests can only be lodged, protests have to be lodged with the chief judge or the contest chair before results are announced, because once they are announced, they are final. After the contest, hey, have a debriefing, or at least ask your audience, anyone have any suggestions? You're a Toastmaster. You did this to learn, right? So you want feedback. Make sure all of your used ballots, etc., are discreetly destroyed. That means you're not just throwing them in the trash at the event. You're taking them home and shredding them or burning them or feeding them to the dog, whatever. Finish up whatever pathways project you were working on and using this task to complete. You want to get that done. And then it's your contest chair's job to submit the notification of contest winners to the next contest chair up the level. But especially if they're brand new, you might want to check and make sure that happened. You are a team. And then celebrate. Hooray, have a party. Pat yourself on the back. You helped create a successful contest for all of your members. I hope this was helpful to you, and I wish you a wonderful, successful contest season.
And there's Karen. I'm going to add you guys to the spotlight, and we're going to do some Q&A. So if you have a question, please raise your virtual hand, and you'll end up over on the far left, and we can start answering your questions. So let's start with Laura Higgin. Laura?
Thank you. One of the questions we have, so as I said before we started the meeting, Auburn has not done anything with contests in at least 5 years, so it's new to every single one of us. We are going to have both contests on separate days. Is it okay is there a rule that it has to be the same judges for both, or are there any restrictions on how we select the judges for those two different contests?
Ryan, do you want to answer that?
At the club contest, it doesn't matter what day you're holding it on. You can have different judges for different contests, because sometimes in a club contest, you might be competing in one and judging the other. Okay. And I've seen it that way. So picking the judges at the club level might be, you pick your chief judge, you know who your contestants are, you know who's going to be your Toastmaster for the meeting. You pick one person to be your ballot counter, and everybody else gets judges' forms.
Cool.
It depends on how you want to do it. And at the club level, you also have the choice of not actually holding the contest, but actually just picking who your contestant is. But if you're going to do the contest and you want to practice, go ahead and hold the contest. The problem is that if you hold the contest and the speaker disqualifies themselves at your club level, they can't advance to the area. That's the downside of actually doing the contest itself. So you potentially could disqualify yourself without, because you wanted the practice.
Good to know. Thank you.
I did watch a person who was, nobody else was competing, one contestant in the contest, so all they were doing was competing with the clock, and they lost. And they could not move on.
That happened at one of our contests one year, and our sole contestant was disqualified at the club level.
Yep.
Time.
Yep. Linda, you were next. You had your hand up.
Yes.
Can I add to that, Kyle? Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Joanna.
So another thing that you might want to consider is if you have one contestant that you're putting forth for a contest and they're going to practice, if that contestant disqualifies based on time, you cannot send anyone else forward. That is your contest and it's over. So be very careful when you choose just one contestant, because if that person disqualifies, you can't say, oh, that person disqualified, I'm going to send somebody else. You're not eligible to do that. And it is in the rule book.
Yeah. So if you, now I want to say the Skwim Club, my home club, we do the whole judging process. And ballot counters and timers and judges and chief judges, we do the whole thing. And I think it's worthwhile because that way, when our members get outside the club, either as a contestant or as a judge or a ballot counter or whatever, they understand the process they're walking into. So it really helps them when they get to the area or division level. Linda, you had a question.
Here, I agree to that. Brian, you mentioned something about a single exception to in-person only requirement, and I didn't catch it. Can you repeat what you said about that?
This year, Toastmasters added a new contest type. It's not a different, they added the online contest to the valid list of contests. There's the table topics, there's the humorous, there's the tall tales, there's the international, the evaluation, and they now have an online contest. That is for all the virtual clubs. So they could actually have a contest, and you can run that contest up to the district level as well. It's just another one of the contests that you can run as a district.
Okay.
So that's been going on for years, hasn't it? Because there's a
they added this one because they're going to back all the contests in person. So what do you do with all the virtual clubs? You're not having a contest because you can't get all the people in the same room unless you got people willing to travel hundreds, thousands of miles to show up for a club contest, an area contest.
And they decided the online contest you're thinking of, Lindy, I think it used to be you had to be not in a district to enter that. So we used to enter it when we were in Yacht, but it wasn't available to us after that. And what Brian's talking about is one the district can choose to run, just like we choose the table topics contest, but our district did not choose to run that this year. So District 32 is not having an online speech contest this year.
Yes, and if we want to learn more about it, is there a section on that in the judging? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
In the rules book, yep. Okay. Carolyn, I think you were next.
We talk about not having ties on our own ballot form. If we have one, what are some strategies you've used to break your own ties?
I go back and I look at the individual scores I gave each of those two, and I compare those two to each other, and I'm thinking, yeah, well, okay, especially with content, was one of them a little bit better than the other? And I just try to think back to those two speeches and resolve the tie. Maybe see if I can think of something that one of them really did a lot better than the other, or whatever. It gets subjective at that point, but I'm picking between two people I thought were obviously really close. And at that point, I don't have much choice but to get somewhat subjective. Yeah.
Can I make a comment on that? Just out of my own experience, one of the things I like to do on my judging form, I don't necessarily write the title of the speech on the judging form, but I like to try to capture a one word to remind me of the topic. Let's say the person was telling a story about their mother-in-law, so I might write mother-in-law at the top. And the reason is, if you're listening to 6 or 7 speeches, and you've gone through the 6th speech, and now you're trying to compare speakers 1 and 2. In your head, it's really hard to go back and go, which one was the first and which was the second, and what did he talk about or she did talk about? And it's helpful if I have that one word. Oh, that's the guy who talked about the mother-in-law, and she talked about buying a car. Okay, now I can remember that and compare that more easily. It's one of those things I learned over time to just make a note on the topic.
Okay. One of the things that I found successful for me when I have a tie for contestants, I go back and I look at what's the heaviestly weighted portion of the contest. When you look at your ballot guide, what is the heaviest weighted portion? And if one is higher than the other, because you can rate at the bottom and that's kind of changes, but at the top, because that's what matters the most is, at least to me, what is the heaviestly weighted, that's what matters the most to me. And if there's a big difference between them, that's how I make my decision.
Okay. Thank you. Carlos, you had a question for us?
Yeah, I just want to double check. This is brand new to me. Only one person advances from the club to district, not more than one, right?
What area?
From the club above the club level, just one per club, not more than one, correct?
Brian,
go ahead.
Okay. This depends on your district. In the rules, there is a provision that if you have a smaller grouping, like less than 4 or less than only 4 in your area, and if the district allows it, and this has to be announced before all the contests started so everyone has the same shot, that you can advance 2 members from the club to the area. You can advance 2 members from the area to the division, provided they meet the provision of limited number of clubs at that level.
Now,
that
Brian,
is the district choice.
Right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that choice is made at the district level.
Yes, the district makes the decision. I know District 32 has made that decision again this year. It allows to add extra competitors forward.
Okay.
So more than one person.
in our district, that's 4. Well, I think the rules say it has to be 4 or less clubs in the area or 4 or less clubs in the division. And
yeah, areas in the division. Yeah.
Okay. Sherry, I think you were next.
Yes, I want to go back to the judging. One of the things that I've found, especially when I first started judging, all of the contestants were so good. I started at 10 and then didn't know where to go. So I have decided that the thing to do is to start that everyone is good. So maybe give them an 8, and then you have room to go up or down with that particular person. And it really makes it much easier to calculate your numbers rather than giving everybody a 10 because, wow, they were so good. So.
Thank you, Sherry. I'm not sure how to pronounce the name. Einer, you had your hand up?
Yes, yes, please. Good day, everyone. My question is, if you are elected for district leadership, district VPPR, or maybe any kind of officer role in a certain district, am I eligible to be a judge in another different district, or it's only in that certain district, not allowed?
Brian, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I know this question came up before. think I think it's only if you're running in your own district. I think if you're judging in another district, you might be safe, but you're also signing that judge's eligibility form that you are not running for an elected office. So you probably should disqualify yourself. I would inquire with Toastmasters about that one to be sure.
Yeah, I would repeat that. I'm looking at the rule right here. It says candidates for elected district leader positions for the term beginning the subsequent July 1 are ineligible to serve as a contest official or as a test speaker at the area, division, or district level. I think
With
the
that-
purpose is so that you can't be currying favor for voting for you as a district leader.
Okay.
By
I
serving as an official, but it doesn't specify that it would be okay if it's a different district. So yeah, you'd have to check with the international, I think.
With the verbiage that Karen used, I would say you would be ineligible. Yes, Joanna.
It's better to err on the side of ineligible than to do it and then find out, oh crap.
Second question.
Can I just speak to this first one, please? So last year, I was the chief judge for District 32. This specific question was elevated to Toastmasters International, and the message that we received back was no judge in any district. If you are up for leadership in any district, you could not be a judge.
Okay, second question regarding the online speech contests. Is it for all districts or for particular districts? Because I was refused to participate, that they asked me to come offline. That's why I'm eager to know a little bit more.
I'm scrolling through the rule book right now.
The district makes the choice whether they're going to hold the online contest for their district. And it starts at the club level and goes all the way up through the area division, just like the Zoom world we've done during COVID. And that one stays online. The rest of the contests are in person. It's a separate contest entirely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Kate, we haven't heard from you yet.
So, yeah, I was just going to point out, if you are in the district contests, you're a contestant in May and you lose, that doesn't mean they couldn't pick you up as a area director, division director come June, right? You weren't running for office, you weren't campaigning, but they happen to need a division director in the district. You lost the contest, so, right?
Yeah, it applies to elected offices. You're campaigning for one of the elected offices, an area director and I believe division director are appointed. So yes, it doesn't make you ineligible to be appointed to those.
Division directors are elected. Area
Division
directors are
directors are
appointed.
elected? Okay.
Division directors are elected. Area directors, some districts elect them, some districts appoint them.
Ah.
I will tell you that when I was a district director, incoming district director, there are area directors I did not appoint, or I did not announce an appointment because they wanted to compete. And I just kept that in my pocket until long after the contests were over.
Right. So I've seen people do that. They're not actively campaigning, but yeah, if you asked them and they lost the contest, then they could do it, right?
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Todd, you had a question? Comment?
I did have a quick question. Does your district also flash the question on the screen? Because in person, usually when you walk through the door, the inside sergeant at arms has a copy of the question in their hand and they show it to you before you walk to the stage. So in some of the districts that I've competed in, they would actually flash the question on screen as well? Or do you just say name, question, question, name?
You're talking about the table topics contest.
Correct.
I can't speak for every district. In District 2 and 32, where I've seen table topics contests, we just read the name, we just read the question to the person. There isn't any, nothing is flashed on screen, no piece of paper is handed to the contestant. We just read them the question twice.
But in person, did you actually show it to them when they'd come in?
No, we read it to them twice.
Because
Oh,
that gives them extra lead time. You ask them when they're on the stage.
Yeah.
At least that's the way I've always seen it done in
Yeah.
32 and Yukon Alaska Council when we
Right.
returned.
The other component to that is when you ask each individual the same question the same way on the stage as opposed to letting them see it in advance, people have different processes for how they're preparing for that. We want to make sure that the stage is equal and fair for everybody. So that way the question is asked on the stage, not given in advance. Because if somebody walks in the door and they have 30 seconds as opposed to somebody walking in the door and they have 5 seconds to process that question, everybody gets the question. Everybody gets the question when they are on stage because it makes it the most fair, level playing field for every single contestant. And that's what we want to make sure happens.
You could be standing at the lectern, the person is reading the question, you're looking at the question at the same time as they're reading it. It just makes it more visual because often there's a misinterpretation between what is being said and what is being heard, depending on how big the room is. There's all kinds of different ambiguities that could change the reason or the answer of the question.
Completely understand that, but that is the component of table topics that every contestant goes through. The other component that you want to think about and that we take into consideration is that the contest chair the contest chair who chooses the question does not choose a question that is so long. It's a fairly simple question that is asked to make sure that it is easily understood, easily heard, and easily interpreted. So there's some components that go into choosing that question as well. So good points that you're giving, Todd, but we also want to make sure that the contest chair who's choosing that question has some freedom to be able to make sure that they're asking the right question and doing it in a way that each contestant is fair.
Correct. And I've also seen where it's only one question, like one word.
Okay. Well, Todd, I'm going to interrupt you.
Possible.
Because we're almost out of time. I think the key point here is no matter which way you do it, you need to make sure you do it the same for all the contestants. So if a contestant gets 30 seconds to look at the card, you need to make sure every contestant gets 30 seconds to look at the card. Needs to be done the same for everybody. Laura, you had a question.
Thank you. Just quick clarification from Brian. When you said that each club can send 2 people on to area, is that 2 for each contest or 1 for each contest?
That would be 2 for each contest.
Sweet. Thank you.
If your district has decided to allow you to do that.
And if your area is 4 or less clubs or your division is 4 or less areas. I think we've got areas with more clubs than that.
Okay. We have been here almost 2 hours. Now, if somebody has a really, really quick question, I'll answer it. Raise your hand right now. Okay. Not seeing a hand go up. Can we get back onto gallery mode? Would you, Lex, would you help me remove all the spotlights? And I would like to thank our panelists. Brian Bezenek, D32 PQD, Karen Robinette. I'm sorry, I keep mispronouncing your last name. I'm sorry. Karen Robinette, D32's Chief Judge, Joanna Tavera, last year's D32 Chief Judge. Thank you, everybody. Can we have a round of applause for our panelists? So at the beginning of this shindig, I asked you to put your name and your district and your club in the chat. Hopefully you did that. I hope you got tremendous value out of this. I hope that you will go home and lead your clubs through the contest process, and then go outside of your club, assuming you qualify. Remember, 2 levels of a path, or 6 speeches from the old legacy system. If you qualify, go to your area, volunteer to be a chief judge, call your area director and say, I'd like to judge. Wouldn't the, area directors love to have people volunteer for stuff. Let them know you want to judge at the area level, the division level. Get practice. It's a great way to learn. If you're not going to compete, you might as well be judging. So with that, I wish you well, and I'm going to hand control over to our presiding officer for final goodbyes. Lindy.
Thank you so much, Kyle, and thank you, all of you panelists. What a fabulous job. Now, I usually like at the end of the meeting to ask people how their experience was, and obviously we don't really have time. So let me ask you to do this. Please go to chat and write down one thing that you're taking away from today's training that will help make your judging experience better, or something you didn't know, something that you gained today. Go ahead and please put that in, both for myself and for our panelists and our moderator. It's good for them to know what they did that was especially sticky, especially memorable. Confidence, says Kate Mills, and that's a $1 million property. So that's really great. And Vicki Randolph's already asking for judges. This is good. This was one of my questions that there wasn't time for, was what do we do about motivating people to judge? If one of the big changes is going from being able to call in judges from anywhere in the world to now an in-person contest above the club level, where there are fewer choices in how to motivate within a smaller pool. Okay. I have put in the chat a little ways back. I will put it again. We have another special event next month. Every month we do that at Skwim. And next month is how to make your meeting extraordinary. That is Tuesday, January 14th, and that one's scheduled to be just an hour and a half. And Emmy Bartholomew is going to be our panel moderator for that one. It's specifically going to be focusing on what can the Toastmaster and what can the general evaluator do to help bring the level of the meetings up. And so I promise that you'll get lots of value there as well.